Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone around the world. This is the We're Nearly There podcast. I'm your host, Melinda McClimans, and this podcast is sponsored and supported by Milan Global. So I want to just shout out to P, my project manager there, and the whole Milan Global team, which I'm a part of. And I also want to introduce my guest, who's also my sister. Yay. So lots of, you're going to notice maybe lots of DNA similarities with us, I think, today. And very excited to have her on my podcast. We've had so many conversations over the years, about the topics we're going to talk about. And I'm just really excited to share her wisdom on these topics. So my guest is Margo McClimans. She's a certified executive coach, facilitator, trainer, speaker, author, entrepreneur, and mama. She designs and delivers leadership development training, intercultural communication, and women's leadership and diversity programs. So she works with managers from Global 500 organizations to develop their soft skills. She especially focuses on the challenge of, you may have rose through the ranks through your technical expertise, and now you have to really kind of become more well-rounded, let's say. So she's worked with CEOs and, very high-level executives. That's usually who she works with. And she also is a great team builder. She has a whole team of coaches she works with and that work for her company, which is, what is your company? Oh, Coaching Without Borders. I knew that. And so we're going to talk about spotting your gap thinking today, which is a very useful, incredibly powerful concept. But I thought I'd start out just kind of to get warmed up, Margo, like, why don't we talk about confidence? And just because that gives us, a connection point to a lot of the work you've done as a coach. I'd love to get your perspective or your readings, like what's going on in people's heads sometimes, when they're, maybe they're lacking confidence and what the steps are to gain more confidence. So let me start with, welcome, Margo.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And I have actually a quote from your book called The Four Channels. And where I lost it. But it's basically about, not holding back, like confidence as a unification of thought and action in a way. And you had several different ways and angles you get at it in the book, but I thought that was a nice nutshell to start out with about kind of your what you teach about confidence.
Yeah, I think I know the paragraph. Do you want me to read that one?
Yeah.
So I spend some time in the beginning defining confidence and really distinguishing it from ego or arrogance, because I think some people feel like, oh, I don't want to be overconfident because they're afraid they'll come across as arrogant. And we're talking more about quiet confidence, being aware of your strengths and capabilities, but not necessarily feeling the need to draw attention to them. And then one you mentioned was another definition of confidence that I really like is confidence is what turns thought into action. People often have good ideas, but they don't take action because they don't believe in themselves or because they don't believe in their ideas. There's also a concept called creative confidence. Creativity is not about having more brilliant or better ideas than anybody else. It's just about being willing to say your ideas out loud, even if they're potentially wrong.
That is an important distinction.
Right, because that's the funny thing is that a lot of people feel like, or say, I don't want to be too confident. It's like actually I think everyone could stand to be more confident because maximum confidence makes you actually less arrogant, less showy. Like real deep confidence is I don't have to prove anything to anyone. I'm quite happy just to chill out in the background because that's how confident I am. I don't need to show the world that I'm confident.
Oh, wow. That thank you. That's because I think I was kind of falling into that trap of thinking in terms of really being loud and speaking up and being prominent
Yeah, when
as
needed, yes.
confidence, you know?
When needed, when that's what's called for, then sure that you're also able to do that. But
Okay.
that should be a
Mhm.
rare, probably occasion.
Yes, yes. Yeah, and it's also contextual, I guess, like, um, yeah, like you say, like what you're called to do in the context or in the moment or what you in your heart's telling you, you know? Like, I think it's a beautiful connection to spirituality as well,
Mhm.
kind of like
Yeah,
your higher self coming through.
yeah, just being one with yourself and not, yeah, just trusting that you're already perfectly not made, but perfectly created or perfectly developed, just you're good enough as you are.
Yes. That is oh my gosh.
Well, that reminds me, I should make sure mine is on silent too.
I needed to turn off my phone.
Yes.
Okay. Well, hopefully that doesn't happen too many times during this call.
Don't
But yeah, like I think that is the lesson to learn really is that like from a spiritual perspective, it's like God created you, you're perfect at your core, like your true self. But if
mhm.
you're more of a atheist, it could be just like a feeling of like everything's okay. Like I like
I'm
me.
this way perfectly.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
I am me and I like me. Kind of a very, I don't know,
Yeah.
core kind of like relaxing.
Right. Really, really simple concept, but very hard to actually accept.
Mhm.
But also confidence is like bouncing back, like you said, contextual. I mean, even just now when your phone rang, I think you demonstrated really great confidence in that you didn't try to like ignore the problem. You said, "Oh, oh, silly. Yeah, should have turned that off. Oh well. Let's hope that we can just keep going." And just getting right back on track, allowing,
Mm.
recognizing when something that potentially could have thrown someone off, just being like, oops, thrown off,
Totally.
back on
And if
track.
I'm in a weird headspace, it totally throws me off. Like if
Yeah.
I'm overly in my head, that's my challenge a lot of the times is I'm just thinking, 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 thinking,
Yeah.
you know, like the wheels are turning and they're burning like, in my brain. And then I get really irritable and like get thrown off by stuff,
Yeah.
which sucks. I want to not do that anymore.
But it's a state. I mean, that's really important. At least for me, I had a really important realization when I was going through a leadership program as a participant once, where I recognized that, personal progress is not a path with a destination.
Mm.
I definitely believe that. I definitely believe that I was, certain things I would do with making progress, accepting feedback, making changes about myself. That was progress, progress, progress. And then falling back into my old habits and traps and stuff was like stepping backwards and getting far.
Mm.
But then I totally threw that picture out of the window and said, no, actually, the goal is not to reach somewhere, it's to be able to stand back up when you get knocked down.
Yes.
And I used to really get knocked down and stay down for a while and really like start making big decisions from that down place. Like maybe I better redefine my life. And this is
Holy
about,
cow.
you know,
Oh my God. That's profound what you just said. Because if you're taking action from a place of the gap, we
yep,
can
yep,
actually,
bridge to
I
that.
thought we'd wait to come into that, but maybe we should start now with what the gap is.
Yeah, yeah. So the goal is like, it's not about getting somewhere. It's about recognizing when you're down and getting back up on your feet again, getting back into the gain mentality, as we'll talk about in a minute. And my goal is now to not fall down because that's unrealistic. But when I do fall down, notice and stand up again, like dust myself off and not take it personally and see if I can, refocus on my goals and say, okay, let's try again.
Yes. Yeah. It's like that Chubbawamba song that's
I get
like
knocked
one of
down.
our
I
anthems
get
as
up
Gen
again.
Xers. I get knocked down, but I get up again.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah, totally. No, I blast that song sometimes when I'm kind of like just
Ooh,
feeling
that's a good
a
one.
lull or whatever.
That's a good workout song. I'm going to add that to my list.
Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. So The Gap in the Gain, just to mention, that was a book that I'm part of a program called Strategic Coach. And this was one of the many books that Dan Sullivan, that the kind of visionary of that program, wrote.
Mhm.
And I shared it with you, as you know.
Yes.
And the idea, I think they have different versions available, but this one shows it well. How he talks about how, most people fall into this, what they call gap thinking. Now, I don't know which side of the book I'm on, where we focus on an ideal.
You're doing great.
Thanks. Demonstration time, harder than it seems.
Yeah, I know, we can see. It's gap gain, yeah.
The gap and gain. So we have an ideal, and instead of focusing on the progress we've made, we focus on the gap of how much further we have to go until we get there. We say, this is the ideal I want to reach, and damn, I have so much further to go, and oh, that sucks, and that's hard, and blah, and I don't feel like that. Instead of
there, done that.
Hang on a second, where did I start, and what progress have I made so far, and can I feel good about that? Just to give a quick summary for any listeners.
Yes, and I'm going to welcome P to the stage here. They're going to join us.
Welcome, P.
Just listen in. Welcome. Yeah, P's my partner in this podcast, and from Bangalore, India. So welcome, P.
I think I hear some.
Hello. So yeah, we're just talking about what the gap is, and it's like that distance. And God, I've been there so many times, like sometimes I feel like, especially when I'm looking at my patterns, I'm like very discouraged in that place. It feels like, I don't know, just sort of impossible to ever change my own patterns. But I think what's amazing about what you just said is it's really all about any goals, whether it's like psychological or like just whatever, like maybe a weight loss goal or like business goal, any goal that you're looking at, and just focused on the distance. So it's actually the same no matter what goal you're talking about.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Like you can either choose to be in the gain or the gap, no matter what situation, I guess.
Yeah, it's a mindset.
Yes.
And it's so hard not to get into the gap, or I should say, it's so easy to slip into the gap mindset, right? And it's something, again, we shouldn't beat ourselves up for that. Like it's also, compassion is one of the best tools that we have to get back into the gain mindset. But it sucks us in. It has like a gravitational pull somehow.
Yeah, and I think we all gravitate toward our patterns, and it's like, I think another positive thing about this is when you're watching your mind, you start to gain that wonderful distance from yourself. So you can, they say, if you spot it, you got it.
Oh, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah. If you spot it, you got it, so that you can immediately not beat yourself up and just be like, oh, I know that. That's that pattern. And it gives you that minute of recovery to be like, okay. And choose to love yourself instead of,
nice.
Put yourself down for it.
Yeah, that's a really powerful thing that you're referring to. And it happens for me when I, sometimes when I'm meditating, when I kind of feel like I let go of my identity, the ego, and kind of feel connected with nature and life around me, then it's so much easier to be objective and view yourself with compassion and be like, it's okay, relax, everything's fine. And that's something that is, if you've never meditated before, it might sound kind of far away, but it's actually pretty automatic, I would say. Like if you really give yourself a chance to quiet your mind, whether it be in just sitting in a forest, looking at nature without without listening to something, or if you really want to do a meditation, sitting down, closing your eyes, you don't have to really like force that. I think it's just what happens kind of when you let go of everything else. You feel that connectedness. And it's one of the channels, I would say. It helps with one of the channels from the book.
Yeah, let's talk about the channels, because what I like about that book is that it starts out with kind of, the theory, let's say, of what confidence is, and a reflection on, well, where are you at with confidence? And then most of the book is more like steps to do it, like to get to a different place with your confidence.
Mhm. Yeah, I try to make it as practical as possible and also as concise as possible. I pictured it should be something that if you have a 2-hour flight, you can easily read it from. I mean,
Yeah.
that's what most of my clients don't have time to read big fat books, right? So that's part of the reason why I also made it super practical. Um, yeah, what shall I say? Do you want a summary? Do you want a background?
Well, one of the things that struck me about it, or like I found really intriguing, and maybe we could just start there, is the name of it is, I mean, like kind of like the secondary title is A Businesswoman's Guide to Confidence.
Mhm.
And I'm just wondering how you made the decision to focus on that target audience of businesswomen.
Yeah. Well, that's part of it, kind of follows my general target audience for all the work that I do. I really love working with women, especially very senior women who maybe don't have as many role models, female role models around them, or whatever gender they, associate themselves with. A lot of, looking back in the course of since the Industrial Revolution, it's been mostly men doing the leadership and management of most companies in the Western world
Yeah.
and much of the Eastern world as well. So the lack of role models, I shouldn't say the lack of role models, the challenge that some people might face if the role models they have don't look like them might make them adopt behaviors that are not natural, not authentic to them, and not necessarily, that don't always work. Or
Yeah.
if
I
they
mean,
do work, they
authenticity, I mean, that's a great point to pull out. Like, I feel like um, authenticity and confidence are very closely linked, and that maybe
totally.
women or feminine personalities are challenged more by the workplace, like by, I don't know, all the assumptions around what doing business means, what leadership means, and things like that. So how do you become authentic if you have a more kind of feminine energy, or if you're,
Yes,
feel more
exactly.
comfortable in that space? Yeah.
Super fascinating topic, and that's exactly why that's my kind of favorite group of people to work with, because it's a unique challenge, right? To It's challenging for everybody, no matter the gender, to be authentic, because it can be scary, right?
Yeah.
If you're authentic, that means that if somebody is kind of criticizing you, that's really you they're criticizing, right? Although
Yeah.
the work then of confidence to help you be authentic is like, no, their comment maybe says more about them than it does about me. I don't need to take it personally. But it's a positive cycle, right? So the more authentic you are, the more chance you have to be confident, because as you have successes, you say that was really me. So I can also really take credit for that. And the opposite, right? The more confidence you have, the easier it is to be authentic. So it's a nice positive cycle to get into. But the other reason why I wrote it for women is because I believe that even though men and women both have faced challenges having confidence and could use more confidence, I believe that women are much more likely to go out and buy a book and read about it. So
Totally.
that's just an assumption, but that's part of what I do.
Yeah. It's a marketing thing for sure. Um, but your book isn't just like superficially. I think it is very relevant to, definitely to my experience. I mean, I don't want to speak for everyone, but
Good.
I really made a big, huge change in my leadership style.
Oh,
Um, in 2008, I made the decision to become a happy person.
yes, very important. I remember that.
Yeah. And so many things cascaded from that, like from that decision. And I think, yeah, I think you can't be happy if you're not authentic. So I was like, I really don't like myself, and I'm unhappy when I'm trying to be very authoritative. I mean, I don't know if I had those words yet at that point, but I was like, I just don't feel comfortable sort of bossing people around, and I knew that that wasn't my teaching style for sure. Like to get up and lecture and be like, this is how it is, blah, blah. Like I can do that, but it takes a lot of energy. You know, I have to really,
Right.
really get focused, and I can really only keep it up authentically for maybe 15 minutes, I would say. And then I kind of am like,
Yeah. Draining, totally draining.
it's very draining. And so I was like, why would I want to be drained all the time? Like, what if I just tried something totally different? Like, what do I feel? I don't even know. It was sort of maybe guided through meditation, you know, through spirit's guidance, like just manage like it's a family. And I was like, oh, I like that, you know? So, you know, I just developed a more caring management approach.
Great.
Like people first, like let's start with where is everybody at right now? Because
Which is
that's really what I resonate with.
Yeah, that's what
That's
you
what I
would do.
resonate with.
If no one told you what to do, that's how you would naturally approach it anyway. It's just that you've been distracted by seeing other people do it the bossing it around way. And you tell yourself, oh, I guess that's what it means to be a manager. I have to do those things to be a good manager.
Yeah.
I'm oversimplifying. I don't think that's the kind of process you went
It's
through.
not really like a conscious decision, I guess. It's more kind of like
Exactly.
a feeling like you have to do something, like a feeling of living up to some expectation that people have, because
Yeah.
it's powerful. It's constantly there. That's what people kind of expect.
Yeah,
And
that's
that's
right.
powerful.
They do, even if they don't want it, that's what they
Yeah.
expect.
Yes. Yes.
And
Yes.
it takes a hell of a lot of, I mean, you said you made the decision to be a happy person. I believe it really takes courage to be happy, actually, because you have to make decisions that other people are not going to like, or they're not going to be used to.
Yeah.
And yeah, so congrats, not congrats, but I want to, acknowledge you for that.
I mean, it was a powerful decision, and let me tell you, it doesn't make you that happy. Like it makes you more real.
Okay.
That's what ends up happening. Like for me, it meant a lot more tears. It meant a lot more emotion, like authentic emotions that aren't very happy,
Yeah.
you know? But it's like sort of, you gain this set point or like understanding that you're basically a happy person.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's that deeper sense of happiness. I sent you the article about the eudaimonia concept, right?
Yes. Let's go into that. Yeah. Yeah. That's very inspiring article because it's like maps out the feeling or the vibe of different mindsets. So why don't you explain that?
Yeah, so I was asked to give a talk to a group of women who are graduating from college. And they said, you can talk, you can just say whatever you want, graduation address. And I was like, okay, what would I want to know when I was their age? And I thought, I just want to know, what does it take to be happy in life? Like I at that point, for me, at least, I didn't know what career I wanted. So I sat and thought about it. And I thought about the different times of my life when I was happier or sadder, or, and I was trying to figure out what was the common denominator. And I realized it took a combination, just like you're saying, like having the courage to be happy. So it took a combination of, first of all, understanding what are my values, what's important to me in life. Taking the time to think about that, to even ask myself that question, was new. And it was part of my coaching training. That's something I'm really grateful for. So being happy requires knowing what your values are and then having the courage to honor them, even if it's inconvenient for people in your life.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you just honor your values all the time and like, woohoo, I don't care what anybody else thinks, I'm just doing what I want to do, that also has consequences, right? So it's about not only knowing and honoring your values, but it's also about taking responsibility for the outcome, whatever there happens from there. You also have to be responsible in life, be responsible for yourself. So if you only, though, do the responsibility piece, you might get far in your career. You might have a lot of success in your life. I call it the picket fence quadrant, because in America, as you know, we have this expression the picket fence kind of is a metaphor for the perfect life, quote unquote. You've made it. You have a house and it has this white fence around it, and you have the dog and the 2.5 kids in the car and all that. That's like
Mhm.
quote unquote success. And a lot of people who are really good at taking responsibility get there, but if they don't also live their values, they
Mhm.
might, from the outside, it looks like they're having great success and they should be happy. And they tell themselves, look at my life. I should be happy. Why do I not?
Yeah.
Because
Yes.
we haven't brought in the values aspect. So this eudaimonia is a Greek term, and I'm about to hire a person from Greek. She could pronounce it for me. I'm sure I'm butchering the pronunciation, but I believe that eudaimonia is like this. Aristotle talked about this really deep sense of satisfaction. It's not just superficial or short-lived happiness. It's really this like, yes, I worked hard. I know what I wanted. I went for it. I took risks. I made sacrifices potentially, and I did things that I loved, and I feel so satisfied and happy. That's eudaimonia. Yeah, and it sounds like you did a lot of it.
Awesome.
Yeah, part of that is like, yeah, there's some tears involved, because it's also, sadness is associated, or it's how we deal with loss, right? So of
Mhm.
course, there's things that you let go of when you start honoring your values. You have to let go
Mhm.
of, and that's scary and sad sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yeah, eudaimonia. If only, I could, you know, be that, like every day. Like I hear people say like, oh, well, it doesn't feel like work because it's so satisfying to me. And I feel like there's some eudaimonia happening
Yes.
there, you know. Um,
Mhm.
and so it's like bringing together kind of this confidence, like your core self with your circumstances and your work situation.
Mhm. Yeah, and it's not
Makes it.
it's not a destination. I mean, we all kind of drift back into the different quadrants. Sometimes we're able to
Yes.
honor our values more than others, but it's just about being aware of it. Is that like getting knocked down and standing back up again piece?
Yeah. Yeah.
We've all spent
So
time and all.
inspiring. Yeah. No. And I mean, I think it's really important in life to remember like you, um, I was going to say have to have, but let's say you're entitled to joy
Yeah,
and you should be joyous. Like you should be
we all deserve it.
genuinely grateful, not virtue signaling, like a gratitude practice, but really like, awesome, I got it, like wins, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that, like what you describe is kind of the path to that, like the inner path, that
Nice.
satisfaction,
Hmm.
where you're like, yes. And it's like, you're
Yeah.
literally jumping up and down because
Right.
you're joyous. Like
Yeah.
jumping up and down for joy is like it's a great saying, because that is really that's what you do actually.
Yeah. The
You're like
instinct.
celebrating a win, that's like,
Yeah,
yeah.
it's scary as hell. I mean, it can be really scary. I'm in the process right now of making a big decision to honor values. That's kind of a risk professionally, and it's like scary as hell. But I know so sure that it's right that I'm going to go for it. But
Do you mind sharing about that?
oh, I think it's too early. But I'd be happy
Okay.
to have a sequel later.
Yeah, okay. Let's do that. I like that. Yeah, because yeah, I think sometimes also it's sort of bubbling up in your heart, but it's not quite verbal yet. It's sort of an image, and you're not quite ready to share it. And that I totally honor that.
Thank you. Yeah, there's the people involved don't all know yet, so I think they deserve to know first before another audience.
There's that too. Like, yeah, and that kind of goes into the spontaneity that confidence can embody, like where you're very real. Like I think something in your book was about how basically you just speak as you're thinking things, you're speaking them in a way. You're expressing yourself more freely. That's a better way to say it. Like a lot of the examples you gave sort of were of like freedom of self-expression, and especially when you're talking about like getting over inhibitions like the inner saboteur. So why don't we talk about that inner saboteur?
Yeah. Yeah, that's something that I hear about a lot from many, many, many clients, men and women alike, where they have a seat at the table, they've made their career enough that they're become trusted advisors and they're important in their organizations, and they still have that, self-censorship going on. They're cautious, they're careful not to speak up, not to say the wrong thing, or show any lack of knowledge or any, God forbid they ask a question. I mean, that's unbelievably common. I can't tell you how often I hear that. And one of the things that we notice is that takes a lot of brain power to be sitting there in a meeting like that, churning over yourself, censoring, shall I say it, shall I not say it, means that you're focusing on yourself and you're not connected to the people around the table or the task at hand, making you less effective, which of course can become a vicious spiral, because then you really aren't ready for that question when it comes, and you might miss the opportunity because you're so, focused on your own concerns. So yeah, part of that is just recognizing it. So, I like the term you use for our title today, spot your gap thinking, because it's just a question of like, oh, wait a minute, I'm having a conversation with my inner critic right now. Instead of listening to the people around the table, going to set that aside and consciously choose to pay attention.
I mean, I constantly do that. Like I have to, I should back up and say, I do tend to notice that occurring and try to, and it's a practice, let's say, that I work on, is to notice the chatter that, yeah, that's interesting that is really coming from a saboteur that's very much not on your side in a way, like sort of,
Yep.
I don't know, like pulling you down is what
Saboteur,
it feels like.
Yeah. And the thing is, the saboteur is not evil. Like, it has a role, which is to protect you, right? That's protect, quote unquote, not actually protecting you. But what the saboteur loves is the status quo. Whatever you've done up until now hasn't killed you, so let's just keep doing that. God forbid you step out and do something new and exciting and out of your comfort zone and bigger. No, stay in the box.
Yeah.
So that's why, a lot of times in those moments when you would speak up, it'd be a bit maybe going over your normal boundary. That's like exactly when it gets really loud.
Yeah. Well, let's talk a little bit about speaking up. I mean, can you give any tips for how to do that?
How to speak up when you already decided you want to speak up. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. Like you want to be real and everything, but like how to be even more effective, like just blurting something out versus like maybe ways to do it or ways to get up the courage.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I like the question. So I would take one step back in the process. And first of all, before you, figure out how to speak up, figure out, is this the right time to speak up? Like, why do I want to speak up? And so first you have to decide if you're going to speak up. And then once you decide, find the courage to do so. So the first step is like asking yourself, what makes me want to say this? And maybe that's too much work. It distracts you from the conversation. But, upon reflection, this is also work you can do at the end of the day, do like I call an end of the day audit, going back, as we often do anyway, ruminating, particularly helpful. Take the rumination and make it productive by asking yourself, why did I want to speak up in the first place? Like, what was my motivation? And ask yourself if that motivation was genuinely for the good of the team and the project, or was it to show that you're active and that you care, or was it to make the other guy look bad, or was it to, speak up because you got feedback that you don't speak up enough, right? Because those things are probably not going to lead to effective contributions anyway. So that's already the first kind of work to do, is ask yourself, like, am I about to contribute because I genuinely believe my comment is going to bring us all forward? Or is this an ego thing? Like, is this about me feeling better about myself or worse about, or like, showing off or proving myself, And then, first of all, I think if you do that work, it anyway comes out more naturally. You'll have more confidence to speak up because you're like, yep, this is definitely for the benefit of the group and for our task. maybe that's all the work you have to do.
And I think that goes back to your book too, in terms of your definition of confidence as something like you believe in yourself because you also believe it's good.
Yes.
Like what you're doing is good.
Yep. The basic fundamental motivation to be there. You're there for a reason. Somebody hired you for a reason.
Yes.
They invited you to the table for a reason.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's definitely a like a recovery experience.
Yeah. Good
Like, oh
recovery.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, I am needed.
Yes.
I
And
matter.
that's the mantra, maybe. And that's the other thing we talk about in the book. Like maybe that's what you knock down. You're like, okay, no, they invited me for a reason. You can stand back up again and then speak. And then the actual, I think some things to make it more effective when you do speak is some things that sound basic and obvious, but are surprisingly rare. And one is wait until the other people have stopped talking. Usually people start like, talking on top of each other and then they wonder why their message didn't get heard. If you're speaking to one person, wait till you have eye contact. Like if they're taking a note, don't start talking while they're taking a note. Give them a minute. Silence is totally fine. Then they look at you. Then you start speaking. You're going to be it's much more likely that they're going to hear you then.
That's a really good point. Like simple habits we need to form. I think it's just bad habits that you're describing, like talking over, blah, blah, blah. Yeah.
Because we're impatient. We think that we don't have enough time. It's like, sorry, you don't have enough time not to take the time to wait till they're listening. Because if you don't take the time, you're going to have to explain it again later. And you really don't have time for that.
Yeah. And then you feel tired, right? Like you're like, why do I feel so tired?
Yes. Yeah. And you can also, there's a couple more things like I just did. So I said, there's a couple more things. So now you're listening. Okay, what are those more things? You can do that in the meeting. You can say, I have an idea. Instead of just blurting the idea out, you say, I have an idea. What is it? And then you wait till they look at you. Yes. And then, right?
And then you're like, I'm on stage.
Maybe that might be scary, but at least it's like, one thing is our ideas are like these precious little eggs, right? It's scary to share them sometimes. But it's even worse if you just throw it out there when nobody's ready to hear it, right? And it's like,
oh yeah,
this rolls off.
That feels terrible.
Feels terrible. So like, wait and say, hey guys, I have an idea. Are you ready? Here it is. And then really, it's not you. It's an idea. It's not your identity. It's not your value as a human being. If they like your idea, that's nice. If they hate your idea, that's also okay because it's not you. You're not putting your human self on the table.
That's a really good point. Yeah, it's not. It's like you're offering something for people to consider, to play around with, that you think is valuable. It's not just like, it's not like it matters, but it's not, you're not attached to. And I feel like I have to clarify that too, like with people, like I am not right now saying we should do this. I'm actually asking for what you think. So sometimes I say, well, what if I start things with what if, or I just say, well, what do you think? There's this thing, I think it's kind of cool, but what do you think?
Yep. Yeah, that's a good one, right? So maybe like giving people some clue of how you want them to treat your idea. Like saying, I have an idea. I don't want your responses now. Take it, please, and think about it. Or you say, I have an idea. I want your feedback. Give me the criticism, bring it on. Or whatever you're in the mood for. I think it helps people to, it helps you get what you need by saying it out loud. And then you feel more confident. Or at least you don't get crushed.
Yeah. Well, and then actually the opposite problem is really valid, of people wanting to be nice to you and not saying, not saying what they really think about your idea, or not digging into it because they're maybe assuming what it is and they want to be very agreeable, and they're like, yeah, great, but then later on you discover like, yeah, no, we were not on the same page.
They either didn't understand it or they didn't agree and they were afraid to say it. Yeah. And that's also where it's like that doing your personal work about confidence is so helpful, because it first of all helps you like detach yourself from your ideas, which makes it easier to say them out loud, first of all, and second of all, to deal with criticism. But it also, people can feel that, and they're going to be more comfortable being authentic with you too.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
And I think it's also, it helps you get off that roller coaster ride when you judge yourself based on other people's opinions of you or your ideas.
Yeah.
Then you feel great when people give you compliments, and you feel horrible when they give you insults or they ignore you or forget you or whatever. And it's like roller coaster. And
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't it be nice if we felt good about ourselves, like we had an internal unlimited source of feeling good from the inside that we can take with us wherever we go? That's like the goal. That's the goal. And maybe it's the ideal, going back to the gap in the game, maybe that's our ideal, and think of how much progress we've made, not how much further we have to go to get there.
Wow. So, oh my gosh, that was really important. So you detach yourself from your ideas. And then
I say that like I'm able to do it. By the way, I still also have a hard time.
you're right. No, but it's really profound. It's like the human condition. Like oh, and what you said too, like when you free yourself, it frees the people you're with.
Yes. Yes. They feel that. They feel that you're okay and you have your feet on the ground, and therefore they're going to tell you the truth. And actually, resistance is a resource. If people, quote unquote, hate your idea or skeptical or whatever, it's like, yeah, bring it on. Interesting. Tell me more. I really want to understand your point of view because it's so different than mine. This is fascinating. And pulling. And then it's like, they might genuinely have a point that you haven't covered yet. And it's like, okay, thank you.
You know, that's what I think of as the dance. Like I just had this come to me today. Like I want more, the experience I want more of is the dance, you know, where you're with people that love themselves enough to really authentically respond to you. That's like, to me, a great metaphor of that is like kind of choreography, maybe, like co-creating the choreography together, maybe, or somehow there's this beautiful exchange, responsiveness.
Cool.
That's a little bit spontaneous and a little bit maybe structured. I don't know, but like I want more of that in my life. So I think this is really an important. I'm so glad we this is great timing for me because like, yeah, like because I can start with myself, like by freeing myself, I can perhaps recognize that I've freed someone else up to say no, or whatever it is people feel like that inhibition that I was describing of, you know, where people want to be nice. And so they're not willing to tell you what they really think. I think I felt very disempowered around that actually, because if you free them up through your own willingness to put yourself out there, let's say.
Yeah, creates freedom in the conversation.
Which could change things. Like that means you have the actual ability to change. Because if you look at like, I don't know what the research says, this agreeableness thing is totally a part of our amygdala and our, you know, survival instinct that seems impossible to ever change. Like it's just a part of human behavior, you know?
Yeah.
I love this because this is the We're Nearly There podcast. And so it's all about like, we are, you know, doing great things. Like humanity is making breakthroughs. Like we are able to change. This is fundamentally what's behind that title. And I just love that idea that of liberation, like freeing yourself frees others, and you can actually change these seemingly, you know, impossible to change behaviors.
Yeah. You deserve to work on your confidence. It helps other people too. It's not just you that benefit. And what I was looking for before was my coactive coaching book, because that's the coach school that I went to back in 2005. And that's why I felt the need to look it up, because I don't know if I get the wording right. One of the principles, one of the cornerstones of coaching is called dancing in this moment, dancing in the moment. Yeah. And I think you would love that. Maybe you should even think about taking it.
Maybe,
training.
yeah.
And it has something to do with, as a coach, you don't bring an agenda. It's all about the client's agenda, but you're also kind of dancing with them. So it's not that you're just getting bowled over by their agenda. You're also kind of, participating, and there's this kind of back and forth and flow, but whatever happens, you dance with it. You kind of take it as it comes. And that does require a lot of confidence to not know where you're going. To completely let go of any particular destination requires, some level of comfort, definitely.
Totally. I mean, I don't think I would have had that desire for the dance or been able to really picture it like 5 years ago, definitely not 10 years ago. Like when I first made the decision to become a happy person, I mean, it was powerful and my life became much better immediately. But I remember when you first published this book, I read it then, which was a while ago. And I was actually pretty shocked at the results of your questionnaire at the beginning.
Oh, cool.
Because I thought that I was a confident person. I saw myself as a confident person.
Mm-hmm.
I thought of myself, I identified with that.
Yep.
And then when I discovered, not so much.
I don't know if that's the impact I was hoping to have, but it's funny you say that, because a lot of people say that on the confidence trainings we do and the women's leadership programs we have. A lot of times we ask them, so how confident do you feel? And they're like, 4 out of 5, 5 out of 5. And then at the end of the day, they're like, oh, actually, I now I'm 5 out of 5. I was actually lower than I thought.
Okay.
I don't know what to make of that, but you're not alone with that.
I mean, I think it's the difference between head and heart.
Like you think you're confident, but the confidence isn't there. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. I mean, I think it's well, I should just speak for myself, but I think I can be very confident about my analyses.
Left brain.
But is that really confident? I mean, no. It's
interesting you say that, because a lot of people that we work with, a lot of the women on our programs, and men too, I'm sure, but I'm just thinking particularly of them right now, is they associate their value as they associate their expertise with their value as a human being.
Yeah, horrible. Oh
Which
my
is
God.
Right?
That's it. Because I mean, I work in higher education, and that's kind of the sea we're swimming in is.
Oh my God, academia. Holy smokes. Yeah. The more you know, the more you studied, the better you are.
Never know anything. I mean, I had a hilarious thing happen to me on, relevant to this discussion. So about expertise. So I just completed a PhD in 2019. And it is such a massive undertaking,
Oh, I can only imagine. That's huge.
It's just, I mean, I'm very glad I accomplished it, but believe me, it's hard and devastating at moments. And I looked at my application statement for the program, and I swear to you, one of my key findings in my dissertation was in that.
You mean it was already there, or what?
It took me 10 years to validate through hell and high water what I already knew.
Interesting. But validation is hard. I mean, yes. 99% of what we're saying, what I say is I think so. But to actually validate that, of course it takes 10 years. That doesn't sound like such bad news to me.
Well, it's just, let me just say the irony was not lost on me. I was like, that's funny.
Hey, but you were right. That's an interesting one. So being right is not always the same as being effective.
Yeah, being right. I mean, it's only really important in specific contexts. There's contexts where you really have to be right. But in a way that's kind of rare, or it's a very specific situation where it's more it's not even just you being right. Have you done your fact checking to make sure this is true? Because you have to fly the plane or whatever, Yeah.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, there's some critical situations. But even then, like flying the plane, like even if you have everything right and you do everything by the book, if like a tornado comes or like some volcano ash suddenly comes up, and even if you've done everything right, even then it might not be effective.
We should make a movie from all these images. Volcano ash. No, absolutely. Like, I think
Right is
being,
very tenuous. Being right is very, it's one
yeah.
of the books that I love most about leadership, the 10 Commitments of Conscious Leadership. The
Oh,
whole thing is about letting go of the need to be right and instead focusing on the need to learn, to learning and growing and not trying to hang on to being right.
oh my God. Yes.
Highly recommend that book.
Yeah. No, that's, oh, what a relief it is to not have to be right.
Yep.
And
Yeah,
how,
and that's confidence too. It takes major confidence to be like, here's what I believe. Let's
mhm.
verify it. And the most important thing is that we're effective.
Yeah. That's a great, I love that. Because, yeah, see, these are the kind of gems I was hoping for. Because since you teach this, um, like, how do you reach people on these concepts? And it sounds like what you just said is a way that you connect with people, like this is your path forward out of this habit of or like this false protection of being right. Like, well, as long as I'm right, I'm safe. But no, not really.
No, exactly. That's a very good point. As long people do think that, as long as I'm right, I'm safe. Yeah. I have a couple of coaches that if they're listening to this, they'll be like, I know, damn, you've already told me. That's like their main area of focus, right? Is realizing the huge insight is like, oh, it's even if I'm right, that doesn't always, it's not always good enough. Sometimes I also have to be open and connect and let go of being right and see what else is possible. And it's really hard when you associate being right and expertise with your own value. I mean, it's like ego death,
Wow.
right? Your brain doesn't distinguish between physical threats and social threats. So it's
Yeah.
fight like hell, like survival to be right sometimes if we're not.
Oh my God. So how do you practice um like what observations are you making, and like what does that look like to get over being right and finding like safety in more like open-mindedness or in detachment from your ideas and your rightness?
I mean, the hardest part is recognizing. I'll go back to your quote about if you spot it, you got it. I think that
Yeah.
was right. I think that's the biggest piece, is just noticing that you're in that territory. What the people that wrote that book I mentioned would call it when you're unconscious. You have to recognize it because we spend so much time there, and it's such a default mode that we don't even recognize it. And a one for me that is a big one is when I get feedback that I don't want to hear, that I feel defensive about. That's chances are I feel the need to be right. Yeah, that if I could
Oh, I see.
temperature rising
Mm-hmm.
as
Like
much as
there's like a physiological pattern there, like you recognize, oh, I know what this is.
yeah, exactly. So that's the beautiful thing. A lot of the work that we do in coaching is trying to help people get also more connected with not only emotions but also body, because it's a
Mhm.
huge it's a huge source of wisdom. So
Mm.
in that moment when like we say, okay, we need to spot it, to if you spot it, you got it. So how do we spot it? Well, you have this wonderful resource, your body, that'll tell you. It'll increase your heart rate. You'll start pumping, blood pressure rises, you might get hotter, increased temperature, you might have perspiration, your fingers might shake. And those are exactly the same things that happen when we have a physical threat, right? Like if you start crossing the road and you didn't see a car and then suddenly you step back, you have the
Yeah,
exact
right.
same thing,
Yeah.
because the brain does not distinguish between physical threats and social threats. It's the same
Mm.
part of the brain that lights up.
Wow.
So it's like if I'm starting to get heated in an argument, in a meeting, whatever, with friends, with family, it's probably like, okay, I have an ego threat here or a social threat. Apparently, I feel like I am right and either the other person doesn't see it or I won't be able to really prove myself. somehow it's like, that's a moment to say, wait a minute, there might be something to spot here. I can't say right now what it is because it's different for every person, but it's such a great and strong indication, right? When our heart rate starts to rise, like there's something to spot here. I'm probably in this scarcity mentality of needing to be right. What can I do then? First of all is take a deep breath, like metabolize all of those stress hormones, the cortisol, the adrenaline, like give your body a chance to get back to breathing.
Yes. And that's one of the 4 channels.
That's one of 4 channels. Thank you for making the bridge. And
very important one too, because you say in the book, that's the one the others build on, actually.
Yeah, exactly. You can't really have full confidence if you're not really doing your breathing and taking those deep breaths to keep your brain online, like to keep your ability to access the full capacity of your brain, right? So breathing is one thing, but then the other thing is like consciously saying, hang on a second, there's something to spot here. It might be about me trying to prove that I'm right. And if you can admit that to yourself, if you're a courageous enough person to recognize that in the moment, because it takes a hell of a lot of courage, to say, okay, so what is there to learn? How can I change my approach right now? Do something different, probably asking questions to say, hang on a second. I noticed that I'm getting really agitated because I feel like I'm really right here, but I want to stop for a second and make sure I understand your point of view. Let me just do a sanity check. Are you really saying this? What is it? Where does that come from? What's most important to you? Why are you bringing this in now?
Creating some space so you don't just jump in and give the counter argument like, no, yeah.
And then, by the way, as they're answering, you can breathe more.
Yes, thank you. I know. Yeah, the breathing. This has been really great to get back to this. Your book. I'm so glad we carved out some time. Speaking of time, we only have about 3 more minutes, and I just want to ask you, like, what are you working on now? Is there something you want to share with the audience? What projects are you excited about?
How nice. Well, I also thank you for getting back to my book. This is something that I published in a different lifetime. This was, I think, 2014, and I've been meaning, 2014. Now it's 2023. And in the meantime, I have a family with 4 kids and have a completely, and so much has developed in the fields of neuroscience and leadership. So what I really want to do, and now saying it out loud, hopefully will help me get there, is write a second edition. So if anybody is listening now and they would find that interesting, please say so somewhere. I need some motivation, because although it's important, it's never urgent. And I was just talking with a coachee this morning about how hard it is when we have things that are important to us, but it's so hard to prioritize them over the urgent stuff. So if I know that people are out there and excited, then that gives me the extra push.
Well, I'm excited.
Good. Thank you.
Yeah. And I offer you the service of good feedback, like quality feedback.
Thank you.
You have text you're writing. I love doing that. I really love editing, but it is a lot of work, so I don't offer it just for free, but I will for friends and family discount for free. So
that's so nice.
Now you really have to do it.
Yeah, no kidding. That's great though. Thank you.
And Pete, do you have any thoughts you'd like to share?
Jay, hi. Yeah, just a comment.
Yeah, so these are all things that I have thought about as I sit in like my classes, and I listen to. So I'm doing my undergrad in psychology, by the way, and there are things that I listen to. Like a lot of times, even professors sometimes bring in this energy of what people should be doing and what people should be acting like, and there are like a lot of times I feel nobody really accounts for the individual experience. Why is somebody not feeling confident at the moment? And if they are not feeling confident, what is the work that actually goes into analyzing or even like becoming aware of the fact that we're not feeling confident right now.
Yeah.
And it's just very affirming for me to hear you talk about this and
Amazing.
not feeling like, oh, I'm just an undergrad who doesn't know what I'm thinking,
Not
as
at
if
all.
like has a long way to go. I do have a
No
long way to
worries.
go, but yeah.
Very normal. No, Pete, thank you so much. And it reminds me of something I didn't say before, which is a fundamental point. I really believe that we were born confident. I mean, think about kids who are learning how to walk, right? They do not fall down and say, you know what, forget this walking thing. Screw it. I just don't have it in me. I'm just not good enough. No, they're going to try again and try again, no matter what. And they speak up. Like, we're born confident. We learn to hide that and to extinguish our confidence. And so actually, that's what I really wish for anybody who wants to work on their confidence is don't think of it like now I need to become a confident person. No, I need to tap into my own innate confidence that's already been there since I was born. It's like peeling off the layers that prevent me from being confident.
And I think, yeah, it is very
Yeah,
affirming
I
to
think.
know. Go ahead. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just gonna say something about, like how we have been conditioned for so long to be shameful
Exactly
of
right.
every
Yep.
little mistake instead of
Yes.
just acknowledging and facing the actual consequences. Like if
Mhm.
we drop a plate, there's like so much shame around that. Oh, you can't carry a plate. You can't carry a
Just
plate.
get a dustpan and a broom.
When
Yeah.
yeah, so that's like the real consequence, and just the sheer boredom of having to broom it out will just deter us from dropping the plate again, and that's more than
Yeah.
enough. But the shame is completely unnecessary, and
Right.
yeah, it has like
And
long
to
term
jump in,
impacts, and it just bleeds into all other areas. Yeah.
and whoever's shaming you probably learned that from watching somebody else and never stopped to ask themselves, who am I authentically as a parent or as a teacher? They just said, oh, I need to now shame the kid. Like that's probably what parent does now. And so it's our job to break the generational stuff like that as well. And when we work on our own confidence, we're going to be able to make better choices in those moments.
Right on. Well, there's so much more to say, but our time unfortunately is up. And I know that you can, easily have
I don't
a
talk for hours.
full calendar today, Margo. So thank you so much for being on my podcast and for sharing your wisdom. And let's do it again.
Anytime. It was super fun. I really obviously love these topics and I love talking to you. So anytime.
Me too. Me too. And thank you, P, for joining us. And we will be, following up soon with our audience about the exciting progress that We're Nearly There podcast is making step by step with every episode and all of the great work behind the scenes that P is doing. And yeah, so thanks everyone. And it was great to be here. I'm going to end the live portion of the broadcast now. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, is it ended?